Okay, class, we're back to shock. We're now on vasogenic shock. Vasogenic shock is when there's extensive vasodilation. Now you can read through here yourself. I'm just going to paraphrase. Septic shock or gram-negative shock, which you can read in my PowerPoints. Just go down and read. And in the textbook also, don't forget. Gram-negative shock is this. When you take microbiology, you're going to find that they have some bacteria that are gram-positive, some are gram-negative. Bacteria have a cell membrane and they have a cell wall. A cell membrane and a cell wall. Now, we have cell membrane, but they have a cell wall to give structure. Some bacteria, though, have additional structures we call a lipopolysaccharide coat outside there. Okay. Now, the point I want to bring out, gram-negative bacteria, when it comes to this cell wall area that you have, let me come down here to show you what I'm talking about. Go to gram-negative shock. All cells have a cell membrane, however, all have a semi-rigid cell wall. This cell wall is made up of peptidoglycans, all called murine. The cell wall can fix a stain called a gram stain, thus making them gram-positive. Okay. Some bacteria have a membrane outside the cell wall. Thus, they have a cell membrane, cell wall, and then an outer membrane. The outer membrane is made up of lipopolysaccharides. This does not fix the gram stain that you'll talk about in microbe, thus the gram negative, like E. coli and Bacteroides. When the outer cell membrane of the gram negative breaks apart, it can act as an endotoxin, causing major vasodilation. So in the gram negative shock, as long as the bacteria are living, you don't get the shock. But when either your immune system or our antibodies kill it, then all of a sudden that membrane starts breaking, and that acts as an endotoxin, which causes massive vasodilation. That's what we call gram-negative shock. Massive vasodilation. Okay, that's septic shock or gram-negative. Toxic shock was that staphylococcal deal that we had, toxic shock syndrome, still vasodilation. Neurogenic shock was where you get hit in the head and knock out the vasomotor center. You know how you'll see on TV somebody gets hit in the head with the butt of a gun? Okay. So you knock out the vasomotor center, let's say. The vasoconstrictor center goes out and you get a little bit of a drop in blood pressure. Okay. Sometimes that can occur also with a spinal anesthesia where you'll knock out an area. So we won't get into all of that. If I was in class, we could talk. Psychogenic is more of a nervous deal. Anaphylactic shock. When we talked about anaphylaxis and immune, massive outpouring of histamine. Histamine is a powerful vasodilator. Again, you can read all that. But anyway, all of these, though, give vasogenic shock. Okay? So when we look at that, vasogenic shock, as we said, there are many reasons for it. But it's still vasogenic. Okay? So let's look over here in the MAP formula, what value goes down due to vasogenic shock. Now that should be an easy one. The radius starts getting bigger. Okay? Radius starts getting bigger. So we'll put that here because there's massive vasodilation. That number gets big, then resistance goes down. Okay? So what ultimately goes down in vasogenic shock is SVR. So SVR goes down because vasodilation. Okay. So then we go to, what you know. So we're saying SVR in red went down. Okay. then we go over here. Now, let's deal with SVR. Okay. Now, what will happen is, particularly in neurogenic shock, we'll come over here. In neurogenic shock, if the vasomotor center went down, that's the neurological. You still have the endocrine. So the endocrine, when it comes to the neurogenic type, might be able to override the drop in the brain vasomotor center. So you may not have as much of a drop in SVR. Let's think about that. Because blood vessels are being controlled by not only the nervous system, but the endocrine system also. Okay? With any of these, you could have, like, let's say with septic shock, okay, these gram negative, you may have such an outpouring from the nervous system and the endocrine system that it may counteract. See, to kind of think about what I'm saying, it may counteract some of that endotoxin. Same with toxic shock. Okay, same with counteracting the histamine. So this is a little different than the others in that you have so many things that's impacting on those blood vessels. It may be able to override histamine or override the endotoxin or the staph and so forth. And again, like I said here, if you knock the vasomotor center out, well, you still got the endocrine. Okay, but anyway, let's come over here. So we may not have as much of a drop. Okay, but let's get back to what we know could definitely happen. If the pressure went down, we definitely know we could have an increase in heart rate. That's a definite. Okay. We know that the heart could squeeze harder. ESV. Let's put that. The heart could squeeze harder. ESV could go down. ESV go down due to harder squeeze. Harder LV squeeze, left ventricle squeeze. We may have an increase in EDV with fluid coming in to try to compensate. So let's put that there. EDV may go up. Outside blood vessels. So, we said that we definitely can increase cardiac output because we could increase this, which would increase this. So I'll put that green. So the heart would try to compensate. CO, let's come here. We'll make that green. Would try to compensate for SVR going down. But as we said in this scenario with vasogenic, even SVR may not go down as much because you have so many factors playing in, and as one factor might go down, the other factor might step up to bat. So vasogenic shock is an interesting situation. Interesting situation. Hopefully you kind of see the logic. That's the main thing in this critical thinking, is the logic, trying to put it all together. And as I alluded to, shock puts it all together. All right, we're almost through with the shock. Let's go to, so we said, then we had the obstructive shock. Okay, let's come here. Now, obstructive shock means that, let's say you had a blood clot to the kidney or blood clot to something or to the brain. Now, with obstructive shock, there's really no compensation for obstruction. Because once you close the road off, how do you get there? So there's no compensation. The only compensation you do have is if you had adequate collateral circulation. Okay, which means if, let's say, the main blood vessel got closed off or decreased in patency. And let me tell you what patency means. How open. So if the main blood vessel got closed off, and so here's a word for you, occluded. Okay. Or decreased, occlusion means close off, a decrease in openness. Patency, openness. Okay, that's not really a word, but I'm going to let it go with that. Got something, there we are. Openness. Then, perhaps, collateral blood vessels, that means to the same area, bypass routes, may dilate. That's the only thing can help you. Now, this close off, here's a word I want you to burn in your mind. Ischemia. Now, that's a word that I want you to really know what I'm talking about. Ischemia is decreased blood supply. Ischemia is decreased blood supply. Ischemia is decreased blood supply. We'll bring it up when I talk about carrying lipids in the circulation, which we'll do. We'll do a video on that, one or two. So ischemia, so in other words, this area is becoming ischemic. And what we want to do is, so decrease blood supply. That's what ischemia means. I want you to burn that word in your mind. Big word, big time in clinical. All right, we'll close here on shock. Study, study, study. And we'll close here on shock.